the opinion of some Abuja residents on the pros and cons of the initiative.
Of course, I prefer it. I hope we should spread all over Nigeria.
But I think it's a better way of using money than carrying raw cash around in the country. I never hear about it.
Another form of transaction apart from using your...
I hear about it before.
I'm aware, but I don't so much know about it. Okay, I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it.
No, I've not heard it from someone.
I don't have any fears. In Nigeria, maybe we are just starting, but whatever the hiccups, the challenges we're having, we're going to overcome them. That's progress. It's a good thing, a good development in Nigeria, and should be encouraged.
The Central Bank of Nigeria is, however, not surprised of the attitude of some Nigerians as it promises to improve on the level of awareness of the policy. Mobile banking is the ability to perform various banking transactions from mobile devices such as cell phones and some iPads using various applications that can be downloaded onto the mobile device. Users are able to check balances, view transactions, make payments, and transfer money. They will even be able to use their mobile devices to do point-to-point transactions such as making purchases and international money transfers. The Central Bank of Nigeria intervened to support the Naira on Tuesday after the local currency shed 0.5% from the start of the day's trade to 162 Naira 85 kobo against the US dollar. The Naira opened at 162 Naira 95 kobo before it weakened on strong dollar demand. It, however, recovered to 162 Naira 90 kobo after the intervention on Tuesday. Ahead of the monetary policy meeting of the Central Bank of Nigeria, economists say they expect the MPC, that is the Monetary Policy Committee, to retain MPR at 12% as well as maintaining other monetary variables at current levels. The Monetary Policy Committee will be meeting on the 18th and 19th of September 2014, which is the second meeting to be chaired by the new CBN Governor, Godwin Emefiele, to discuss developments in the global and domestic economy and deliberate on appropriate monetary policy responses. Analysts at Meristem Securities Limited said, based on careful study of all the necessary factors ranging from international economic position to domestic economic and financial dynamics and external sector developments, they expect the MPC to retain monetary policy rates at 12%. Just as Nigeria's inflation rises 0.2% in the month of August, the annual rate of UK inflation fell in August as the cost of petrol, food, and non-alcoholic drinks declined. Consumer Price Index (CPI) inflation fell to 1.5% from 1.6% in August. This is according to the Office for National Statistics of the UK. It means the Bank of England remains under little pressure to raise interest rates in order to keep CPI inflation at or below its target rate of 2%. Retail Price Index (RPI) inflation also saw a reduction to 2.4% from 2.5% the previous month. That's business news. Do have a pleasant business day.
I believe never.
All right, thank you there for that business package. We are having a newspaper review right now. On your screen there is Mr. Bayo Atoyobi, former Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Press Council, who joins us now for the newspaper review. Bayo, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, well, we begin our newspaper review today with this day. But of course, there are three dominant stories on the front pages of the very many papers that we have with us this morning. Those stories concern matters arising from insurgency and related trials over mutiny, and the almost $10 million that got seized in South Africa, as well as the synagogue building collapse. But we begin with this day newspaper, and the lead story on the front page of this day is a double-decker headline that says $9.3 million traced to intelligence agency as Nigeria and South Africa open talks on seized cash. There are three riders to that particular story. The first rider says leased aircraft released to federal government. The other rider is Oriseja for others clarify ownership of private jet. And military Boko Haram clash in Konduga. Also on the front page, just below the name flag of the paper, is a story that says mutiny. That's the kicker. Mutiny. Soldiers sentenced to death to appeal ruling. And of course, there are three riders to that. TUC, Falana, others condemned judgment, and hash-free 12 Nigerian soldiers goes viral. And also ex-GOC 7 Div, that's General Officer Commanding 7 Division, in Maiduguri, retired. And then on the front page also, just above the name flag of this day, Zuma. Zuma, of course, is the president of South Africa. 67 South Africans died in synagogue. Details of that can be found inside the paper. And of course, there's a business story on top of that. It just has to do with oil and gas. Total resumes $2.5 billion Usan deepwater oil block sale. Those are the stories on the front page of this day this morning. And Claire, maybe just to very quickly, leadership newspaper of, or rather, let's go with the Sun in the meantime. Let's take the Sun. The Sun newspaper, of course, has, as I said, stories similar to what we read earlier on this day. But very quickly, just above, just beside the name flag, that's an earpiece. Just beside the nameplate of Daily Sun, 2015, that's the kicker. No vacancy in Aso Rock. That's according to the ministers. Of course, the ministers are members of the Federal Executive Council. Details of that to be found on page 3. And also related to that is the story, presidency, I won't give up. That's according to Atiku. Find out the details on page 7. And BOI, NIJ, FRSC, others pay tributes to Dimba Igwe. Details to be found on page 6. But, of course, the lead story on the front page of Daily Sun is Boko Haram installs 2 emirs. The emirs are said to have been installed, according to the riders, in Goza and Damboa in Borno State. And there's also a rider that says, Senate to Jonathan, declare total war on sect right now. And also at the foot of the paper, just at the foot of the front page, synagogue building collapse. Death toll rises to 63 as woman walks out alive. Earlier this day says 67 South Africans, but this one says 63. Death toll rises to 63 as woman walks out alive. And on page 14, but promoted on the front page, is gunmen attack Kogi monarch. Claire?
Okay, Kingsley, indeed, we're inundated with papers this morning, so we'll quickly try as much as possible to take the much we can. Let's begin with People's Daily. Quickly look at the front page. The lead story, jet belongs to Oriseja 4, coming from Aviation Minister, and it writes with 2 there. Can President has only residual interest, that's coming from the church, and plane back home. $3.9 million arms deal. Jet belongs to Oriseja for Aviation Minister. And coming down there, the picture story of Minister of Petroleum Resources and other directors of the corporation there. That's, of course, after stakeholders forum on environmental restoration of Ogoni land in Abuja yesterday. Treading below that picture story, Boko Haram, Jonathan under fire in Senate. 7 insurgents arrested in Borno, and CBN governor gets ultimatum to name sponsor. Details on page 2. Then trending, other stories there trending at the foot of the People's Daily. We move on to the news, New Telegraph front page. New Telegraph leads with Jonathan meets with Boko Haram leaders, and it rides with the secret negotiation in Chad. Details on page 3. Lead story on the front page of New Telegraph. Jonathan meets with Boko Haram leaders and the secret negotiation in Chad. And coming below that again, the story on the $9.3 million seizure. Aircraft is mine, says Oriseja 4, and Khan accuses APC El-Rufai of blackmail. And just to go above, just below the masthead, Below the masthead, before the lead story, federal government loses 17.9 billion naira as strike hits fuel exports loading. It writes with Total resumes $2.5 billion Nigerian oil field sale. That's the front page of the New Telegraph. The Nation now we turn to, and the Nation leads with synagogue tragedy. South Africa mourns 67 citizens. Synagogue tragedy. South Africa mourns 67 citizens. And it's riding with, we're grieving, says Zuma. And a picture story of Ebola awareness campaign organized by some NGOs there. Ebola NUT vows to shut schools Monday. Pages are on 7 and 59. You can find details there. Now, trending at the foot, Jonathan meets security chiefs over seized $9.3 million. Pastor Olushajafo confirms link with aircraft. Today's on page 4. And above the masthead, other trending stories. Boko Haram, we're at war, says Senate. Reps give 200 million naira to victims. And there are other trending stories on the front page. And I'll quickly take the National Mirror. National Mirror, it leads with mutiny. TUC others condemn soldiers' death sentence. TUC others condemn soldiers' death sentence. It writes with one military purged of Boko Haram apologists, and they must die. Defense headquarters insist in the picture story of the court-martial session there. Synagogue building collapse, death toll rises to 62. Survivor walks out 4 days after. Kogi under siege by robbers is trending at the foot, and NNPC workers down tools, shut down stations. Details are on page 6. And trending just above the masthead, federal government South Africa negotiate over seizure of $9.3 million. Olushajafo admits ownership of church. And Ebola teachers reject September 22 resumption date. Obama sends 3,000 troops to fight scourge. Details on page 5. And okay, I think we just allow Mr. Twebe to quickly do a review of those papers we have.
Thank you. Among the running stories, you recall yesterday there was this breaking news about some quantum of dollars seized in an aircraft. Apparently, it seemed to have been confirmed that the money was meant for procurement of some armament, and things have been resolved. However, there are some clarifications that are required. The current president of CAN has an agency that has an interest, but that aircraft was leased to an organization that is called Green Coast, and it is Green Coast that also in turn leases it to the intelligence agency. But since it is bordering on acquiring helicopter gunship and equipment, I think it's better be laid to rest until the agencies sort them out. But apparently the procedure for evacuating the money was badly handled, and that shouldn't have been. On the other issue about the human interest, there are conflicting figures now. South Africa is claiming to be mourning 67 of its citizens, but the national emergency is insisting that there are 63 deaths so far and 131 that are injured. It's not impossible that South Africa probably will have a list of its citizens that were within that premises, 67 of them, and however, maybe some of them are among those that are injured. But the encouraging news was that at about 2 a.m. yesterday, a 45-year-old woman walked out of that basement on her own. And so it is encouraging that those who are carrying out the security activities did not actually call it off, because after the 5th day, they were even contemplating calling it off before they brought in sniffer dogs. And this woman, having been trapped in a column below the basement, there was oxygen there, so she was able to survive, and she walked out with only minor bruises on her arm. Don't forget that when there was earthquake in Haiti, after 21 days, a baby was even brought out from the rubble alive. So it is rather too early to call off the rescue mission, and they should continue. And we might be lucky to have some of our citizens alive and recover those that are there. On the issue of Ebola, Mr. President has appealed that schools should resume, and because of the implication of raising the false Ebola alarm. But the contention are simple. The teachers are saying they will go and resume only after their teachers have been trained, and they are asking that schools should be provided preventive equipment, protective facilities, as well as infrared red thermometers, and their teachers should be trained about how to detect and then handle emergency cases. Some of the things they are demanding also is potable water, gloves, and their teachers to be trained. It's encouraging that in UNICEF was helping to train about 500 teachers that was reported in River State yesterday. I think if some of this is carried on, the teachers will be in a better position to protect themselves and also protect the children under their work. But the danger that is being stressed is if embassies in Nigeria, like Mr. President was pointing out, report to their home bases that Nigerian schools have not resumed because of Ebola, and a wrong impression will have been created as if there is a pandemic or an epidemic of Ebola. It must be remembered that the Ebola we handled was imported into Nigeria. So it was not an epidemic here, and it didn't grow to the pandemic section that it is in Liberia and Sierra Leone. In Liberia and Sierra Leone, as at now, there are about 2,400 that have been dead, and there are 4,784 cases. And we all remember that for us in Nigeria, we had 19 cases. We unfortunately had 7 deaths, and the other 12 have been cured of Ebola.
Okay, just very quickly, we'll take some other papers now. I have with me here Daily News Watch. Daily News Watch says on its front page, the lead story, Senate expresses fears over 2015 polls, and 2 riders seeks total war against Boko Haram. And the other rider says reps in closed-door session. Also on the front page there, just above the name flag, there's a story that says mutiny. Nigerians split over soldier's death sentence. And also on the front page on Ebola, don't resume now, NUT orders teachers. And the rider says Jonathan pleads, and UNICEF trains 5,000 for schools. Also on the front page there is a story about the 67 South Africans who are said to have died in the synagogue church collapse, according to South African President Mr. Jacob Zuma. And then the strip at the foot of the front page says House, that is House of Reps, gives 21-day ultimatum on PIB. House gives committee 21-day ultimatum on PIB. Details will be found on page 4. And federal government moves to implement UNEP report on Ogoni land. And also on the front page of the Union newspaper, the lead story says, we've dealt with Ebola, that's according to President Jonathan, and urges teachers to reopen schools. Above the name flag is a story that says Nigeria must defeat Boko Haram. That's according to David Mark, President of the Senate. And of course, other stories relating to Ebola and the synagogue are also on the front page. But from the Blueprint, very quickly, Blueprint, the lead story on the front page of Blueprint says 2015. No vacancy in Aso Rock. That's according to PDP leaders. And then on the front page, also below the name flag of the paper, it's a story that is promoted there. Davis used against me by Boko Haram sponsors. That's according to Sheriff. Details to be found on page 6. And there, the paper says that synagogue collapse, death toll rises to 60. The variation from others that we had read before. And also the last one from the front page, just at the foot of the paper of the front page there, below the photograph, it says mutiny, death sentence necessary for national security and discipline. That's according to the Army. Details of that will be found on page 48 of the Blueprint. Claire?
Well, of course, Kingsley, just as a point, I will be looking at this issue on tomorrow's edition of Good Morning Nigeria, and that's an interesting topic that we will have to look at. Okay, let's tee off from where you stopped. 2015 elections on the front page of Daily Trust, that's still on Boko Haram crisis. 2015 elections not on the table. This coming from Mark. We're in a war situation, Senate President says, and there's a quotation from him there indicating that there is no question of election. It is not even on the table now. We are in a state of war. The Senate President was quoted on the front page of the Daily Trust. And Vanguard leads with a similar story. Boko Haram Senate angry, sends Mark to Jonathan some riders there, of course, some picture stories there of security operatives with sniper dog at the synagogue, and the story on federal government defending the $9.3 million cash seized in South Africa. The riders opens diplomatic talks on seizure, jet back in Nigeria as federal government releases data, no hands in arms deal Orisha Jafo. But I quickly round off this paper review this morning with the cartoon, Mr. and Mrs. It's something that Joy and I are quite familiar with, but I don't think the men will buy into this. Mr. and Mrs. this morning, Tina is celebrating her birthday. She's apparently talking to the husband next week. The Ashaibi is 25,000 naira per yard. I told her to bring 10 yards. For me, my loving husband is up to the task. And the husband nicely, with this grinning smile on his face, replied, "Nice joke."
Okay, and just before we wrap up our newspaper review this morning, we won't have time to go to the inside pages, but there are at least 3 stories from the leadership. We have leadership, I think we also have the Daily Trust and Daily News Watch, which we have reviewed. 3 stories very quickly from leadership. They're from the inside pages. The inside pages of leadership. It's a story that says Malam Nasir El-Rufai, former FCT minister, has formally declared his interest to contest as Kaduna State Governor. Another story says that the federal government has released over 130 billion naira as intervention funds to tertiary institutions. And the last one says that a member of the Delta House State of Assembly, the Delta House of Assembly, was walked out of the chambers for indecent dressing.
Okay, indecent dressing, nice joke. Of course, I talked about the Ashrabi, nice joke. Mr. Toyebi, I'm afraid we'll have to end on this note. I don't think you'll have the time to react to that joke there. But we want to thank all the papers that have come in this morning, quite a number of them, and keep bringing in your papers. All right, we end this part of Good Morning Nigeria. We're moving forward now, and when we come back, we'll be looking at the main issue. We're still talking youth involvement in competitive democratic process. Stay with us.
Jig in the water will get school uniforms whiter, and it is the tough stain fighter that will get your whites much brighter. Just Chickens! Pop Purian Lemon. Just Chickens! Hey, you better go get it! Now available in lemon and pot puree fragrances, the newest and freshest way to chickens.
Have called our women because our pastoral land should be our pastoral. Those who are going to be farmers,
on the TV,
can't you see us in the meeting?
Wallahi, I say plenty people. Wallahi, they show you one times. I don't go share again. Wallahi,
Jack, how TV?
On the TV.
Wonderful. Wallahi, we must do our most. Everybody must attend our town rally in North Central, Northwest, and Northeastern Zone.
Yo! I was will cry go around the town. Wallahi, at once. Yeah, kowa jama'a mai gari yana gayyatar kowa da kowa a fada. Mai gari ya gaishe ku. If you are informed, ko da yaro jariri na goye a baya. Mai gari matin yi a majalisa an jima saboda ana gayyatar.
Oh yeah, Tan Northern Nigerian rallies, ya fara sosai fa. Not Central people, not West people, not people. The town rally they will not do now. Saturday, September 13th, Saturday, September 28th, and Saturday, September 27th. Kawaii. President Goodluck Jonathan don't do us better. Wallahi, make we join other multitudes of Nigerians to thank him well and join for the demand. Town Northern Nigerian rallies. Now we go begin rally the main rally. Well past other rallies.
This message is brought to you courtesy Transformation Ambassadors of Nigeria. TAN for One Vision, Nigeria.
All right, thank you for staying with us. Yesterday, we kicked off discussion on how to encourage Nigerian youths to participate actively in competitive democratic process. And Usman Mohammed Minjibo did a background report in which he looked at the age limit, of course, or who qualifies to be called the youth, and what are the responsibilities of a youth and how they can be encouraged to, of course, be involved in the democratic process. Let's take a listen to that background report once again.
Passed on the youth for their vigor and courage to lead by Robert Kennedy, former American senator, in his 1966 Day of Affirmation speech. Under various cultures, laws and conventions, such as UNESCO, youth are defined as persons within the ages of 15 and 35. Globally, this set of people are estimated at about 4 billion, representing over 50% of the world population. A survey of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization UNESCO shows that about 90% of this youthful population lives in emerging and developing economies, particularly in Middle East and Africa. In Nigeria, for instance, out of the current projected population of 169 million, young people account for over 43% of the population. Experts, therefore, stress the dire need to engage these youth in social, political and economic transformation. The idea of youth participation has become a popular part of contemporary political talk in every part of the world. However, in Africa, including Nigeria, youth participation in politics is said to be consistently low in the last 1 decade. Some of the indicators for this include absence of youth in party hierarchical structure as contestants and as voters. Unfortunately, their participation often begins during electioneering campaigns and rallies, as well as at polls, and ends with the violence after announcement of election results.
Because initially, during the initial days of our democracy, youth were being used as talks. But with the perfection of the INEC processes, the electoral processes, you could see that talks are going to be, they will not be used. They will not, their impact will not be much in future elections.
Political analysts are of the view that opportunities should be provided for this big population to have a voice in the nation's decision-making process.
When you look at the history, the former head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, started ruling this country at the age of 29. And if he should make it at that time, I don't see the reason why the present youth cannot be involved in the governance of this country.
At the national conference, we took serious note on this matter, and that's why we drastically reduced the age limit for those who are contesting for House of Assembly, governor, down up to president.
This, they believe, will not only make them meaningful members of the society, but also help develop their leadership skills as better future leaders who will acquire more exposure and sagacity to lead the country.
Okay, I'm sorry. That was the tape of yesterday that was replayed today. I made a correction yesterday. General Yakubu Gowon did not become Nigeria's military head of state at the age of 29. Instead, he became head of state at the age of 32. And when he left office after the coup of July 29, 1975, he was 41 years old. We begin our conversation this morning, and we have joining us now Ms. Toyosi Akerele. She's the founder and chief executive officer of Rise Networks, an NGO that focuses on youth education development. Ms. Akerele, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
Okay, I mean, we know your background at the University of Jos, student union activism, and so on and so forth. And he also, probably the youngest member of the Victim Support Fund for the insurgency in the Northeast. But our focus when we started this conversation yesterday, is on how to canalize the energies of our youth into more productive ends, in this particular instance, competitive politics, and also the dividends of democracy via national development. Part of our take on it today will have to be, it's important for the others, as it were, to also hear out the youth. What is the world view, in your opinion, of the Nigerian youth today, looking at politics as a subset?
You see, my position on this issue would be very controversial, and it would lean a lot towards what the young people would expect me to say in contextual situations of this nature, especially vis-a-vis what the older people also would expect me to say. But I, I've made my position very clear on this severally, that while I do not quite enjoy the body language of successive governments to in the approach to youth inclusion at various levels, and for the purpose of this discussion, competitive politics, I would think that young people shouldn't just be given roles of responsibility because we're young people. We should be given roles of responsibility because of a clear demonstration of competence, capacity, and the confidence it requires to be able to provide any level of effective leadership. I'm a bit worried about the way young people are perceived, or the way our generation is positioning, to be able to get actively involved. World over, it's been difficult to, make reference to any case in point where you'd find young people actually given responsibility. Most of the time, young people actually take responsibility, and, for what it's worth, I believe that leadership would, can begin from whether it's behind to the front, or from whether, and, Nigeria is not different. And whether you like it or not, President Jonathan's administration has been very, 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 this is not a campaign, but when we see the truth, it's important to be objective. This administration has been very supportive, in terms of youth inclusion. I'm not sure that about 10 years ago, you'd find a young person like me on a very important, crucial, assignment like being on the committee for the Victim Support Fund. We also know how many young people were at the national conference compared to the one we had a few years ago when I was back in university. You also find that, a few very crucial positions, Shopee, you have several young people, in different crucial positions, given the opportunity to air their views and represent the interests of these young. Now, the question would be whether when young people get the positions of authority, would they go on to be better than our predecessors, and would they go on to effect and institutionalize any relevant change that would be somewhat different from what we've experienced in the past. And so for me, it is the youth inclusion argument in Nigeria would be more for the significance of building the capacity of the next generation to take on the gauntlet of leadership. Because you would find that, politics is seemingly perceived to be what you call, almost dirty and, murky waters for some of us. Some of us who are just technocrats who just believe that, we'd rather work with the international organizations than come to play politics here. We don't want to kill anybody. We don't want to maim anybody. But, the truth is, these days, there's only enough that people can take. And so because we're experiencing a situation where almost, the best are almost ruled by the worst, young people are beginning to sit down to say, look, we're not going to sit and take a back seat anymore and allow this guy who's representing me in the House of Reps or in the Senate, or as minister of my constituent, or as a House of Assembly representative, he's not in any way better than I am. And so for me, the point would be whether young people, whether my generation is ready to take on the responsibility of leadership, because there's no point in us trying to get to power to go and repeat exactly the same mistakes.
That's why I asked,
of the other people.
What is the world view of the youth at the moment? World view, that's in the context of our nation.
I understand. Yes. I'm excited to see the level of youth engagement, especially as regards, the way we're demanding mandatory accountability from the government. It's unprecedented in Nigeria, especially with the advent of, social media, to see young people push for, push in terms of certain levels of agitation, demanding that these are expectations of government. These days, you have young people a bit more knowledgeable than we used to be. So we're not as, even though sometimes many of us will be perceived to be incorrigible, recalcitrant, obstinate, or whatever it is, you'd find that most of the time we're agitating for very, positive changes. Those agitations are very, while they may not be they may not fall on the good side of the people who are leading us. In the end, the truth is that the agitations are very, necessary, and these are things that are very crucial to a true, a truly democratic process.
Okay, let me. Anyone. Youth out there listening to you talk will probably come to the conclusion that, see, the way she talks, she's not one of us. And by being one of us, I mean privileged. to be able, yes, to be able to forge ahead. Now, you have been able to break even in a difficult democratic environment where many youths have found it difficult to even, get their views to be heard. So, did you have to pass through the crucibles?
So let me make this clear. I wasn't born with a silver spoon, but my parents were very disciplined people. And the quality of young people we're raising in society today is a reflection of the kind of parents that we do have. I went to a primary school. I went to a public secondary school for my junior class. I went to a public secondary school for my senior class. I went to a public university. I was a graduate of the University of Jos. I was deputy speaker of the Student Union House of Parliament, University of Jos, when I was 19. But in fact, I started what you call the Uni-Jos Females Day. And that program is currently named after me in that university. And then afterwards, I started to do a set of RISE networks, and I started to partner with young people to organize, youth leadership programs. So, for example, I didn't go to school abroad. And the challenge that I have is young people consistently making excuses for what government didn't do for us, what private sector didn't do for us. I think the point is for young people to take on the responsibility that it is possible to achieve greatness in this country. I'm sitting, 2 years ago, I was sitting in my room. I was actually in the bathroom when I was when my phone, I started trending on Twitter. Why? Mrs. Michelle Obama was coming to Africa for the first time, and she was organizing the Young African Women Leaders Forum. And I was the only, she had recorded a video televised to America that she was, she had heard about my work. I organized the largest youth programs in Nigeria, and she was looking forward to see me. I'd never had any encounter, but in fact, I received mails to come and meet with her afterwards. I just deleted them thinking it was spam. But lo and behold, afterwards, I had the opportunity and the privilege to go and meet, have a conversation on leadership with Mrs. Michelle Obama. So the truth is, young people need to understand that nobody would give us that power. But we must also demonstrate that we are ready to take on leadership. The question I've been asking many of my contemporaries is, are we going to be any different from the older people? Every time I see young people these days, I'm afraid our generation would probably be a bit more corrupt and probably be a bit more intolerant to opposition, because these days you sit down, the older people will sit down, have arguments, and they've mastered the art of dividing us. So the older people would sit down and have arguments about this, and they will mend fences. We, the young people, would sit down, pitch our tent with different people, and then we're upset and we stop greeting each other because somebody is APC or somebody is PDP. It doesn't matter. I think what is important is that Nigeria is the recurring decimal in all of this. And if we're truly passionate about our country, it would not be about what it is, what's in it for me, which has become the language of our generation.
So what explains this behavior in the youth, which you just described?
I already said that the quality of young people in Nigeria today is a reflection of the type of parents that we do have. In these days, young people clamor for unemployment, but you give some of them jobs, they would not resume early. You give some of them jobs, they cannot even do the jobs well. Now, you see, I went to University of Jos. I didn't go to Unilag or Ife. Forgive me. This is not in any way to undermine, to run University of Jos down.
Those are alumni of University of Lagos.
You understand? But you see, in the end, yes, University of Jos produced me. I'm a proud alumnus of that university. So I went to university, I went to NYC camp in 2008, and even children, and I say this without due sense of modesty, because I made the decision to be outstanding in school. Even students who went to school abroad, who went to Cambridge, you see that they can't compete. Because the truth is, I've been in Nigeria all my life. I understand the way this country works. The fact that somebody went to Harvard does not mean we have access to the same internet, we have access to the same knowledge. Look, the environment is different. But it's this same environment that, when we look on the negative side and say Nigeria is such a bad country, I need Nigerians to understand that we are the master brand managers of this country. For every single time you go on Twitter to say Nigeria is a bad country, this is not working, you are telling the international community bad things about our country.
But that's what exactly the young guys are doing.
Which is why we must change. We know that our country is not perfect. We have expectations of the government that may not be met on a consistent basis. But the truth would be that there's no country that was transformed holistically on the premise of complaint. The Book of Lamentations was not written because of Nigerians. And the truth is, Nigerians must learn to lead from a perspective of pragmatism and a perspective where it is not so much about laying blame on who, but in that small space, if you're a young person, you have a customer service role, how effectively do you do your job on that role? How early do you get to work? What are the personal values you embrace? In a country where young people don't want to work but want to earn money, what does that have to do with government? In a country where people drink pure water and throw it out through the bus window, what does that have to do with government? In a country where people get jobs and they prefer to be insolent at work and try to cut corners, what does that have to do with government? And people would make excuses of the fact that it's poverty. You see, you go to university these days, you see an average young university student who wants to carry a Gucci bag of £5,000. She doesn't want to work for it.
Aristo.
And do you understand? She wants to compete with the woman who has been in public service for 25 years. Life doesn't work like that. Our generation has got to understand that you cannot put the cart before the horse. We've got to learn that the only money that is sweet is dignity in labor. And what the government needs to do is to find a way to celebrate some of the most outstanding people in this country. Because you see, the truth is role model, the idea of role modeling and mentoring has played a crucial role in the way governments and even leaders have emerged in developed nations. So in a country where people sleep with other people's children and they're given chieftaincy titles, people steal our money and they're given doctorate degrees, somebody has to convince my generation why we should not steal. Because the guys who don't steal are the guys who never get heard of. The guys who steal are the ones who get celebrated all the time. And they're the ones who earn the privileges and all the perks of office anyway.
Yeah, Mr. Kirele, just hold on. We'll come again to the issue of mentoring because it was one of the key issues that arose from our conversation yesterday.
Absolutely.
You have already identified the gap in parenting as one of the reasons why we are seeing the kind of attitude we are seeing from the youth. What, in your opinion, explains those gaps in parenting, or what are the kind of gaps that you have seen in parenting? You may not be a parent, yes, but what are those gaps so that the elders can learn from these gaps and then fill in the gaps and ensure that we have a more productive young population?
You see, because I'm a very traditionally conservative woman, I try to make sure that I marshal up my points in a way that does not throw jabs at anybody. I have my parents at home, and the fact that an elder is not wise does not remove his eldership. So the fact that I insult an elder shows is a reflection of my own personal character, because I can disagree with an elderly person without, being, using any derogatory remarks. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I wasn't brought up to do that. I'm traditionally Yoruba and I'm proud of that culture. But that said, I'm afraid our parents have misplaced priorities in the way we're raising children. Even in the way we raise children that are boys and the way we raise children that are girls. I hope we get the opportunity to address that issue sometime, that there's nothing called a girl child. A child is a child, whether it's a boy or a girl. Because in a situation, absolutely, but we'll discuss that on a later date. But I mean, let's stay with context. Parenting in Nigeria has deteriorated because parents are misplacing priorities. You find these days you go to children's parties and girls are young girls are wearing clothes almost half naked. That girl becomes 18 in about 10 years, and you tell her that no, you can't dress naked. That's what you taught her. That's what she's learned to, she's accustomed with. In a country where these days you go to schools, a teacher beats a child, the parents goes there to go and warn the teacher, why did you beat my child? That's the same child who's going to become a menace to society in another few years. And so I think that it's important for our parents to understand that the children of the poor these days are even doing better than children of the rich, because my Yoruba people always say, forgive me, it means a child that you give birth to that you don't raise well is the one who will sell the child the house that you bought. So it's not about how much money you have to train your children. My parents weren't very rich people, but in the end I turned out well because I got the training, but I also made the decision to retrain myself. So parents need to learn that it is important that, one, the quality of education you give your children is very crucial. Number two, the values that you epitomize as a parent is what you hand down to the next generation. So if you are
parenting, it's a whole lot of
exactly, it's a whole conversation on its
own. So let's just stay with the issues. Now, you talked about role modeling, and this is a question we put across to our guest here yesterday. Role modeling is oftentimes confused with godfatherism. Could you help us put that in perspective?
Role modeling
in politics.
Yes.
Yeah, in politics.
My role. Let me use myself as a case in point. So I have a few role models. Let's not bother, reading out names. It will be unending. I have a few mentors. I have a few role models in that the people that I look up to, I probably haven't ever met them, but I read about them from time to time. You know, I want to live the kind of life they've lived. I want to be able to represent the values. I like where they are. And I would like to embrace some of those principles that have helped them to reach where they are. Those are role models. For some of them I've never met. I just read about and I try to, just follow through in the media. My mentors are people I have direct contact with. So as a young woman, I have a dream, I have an ambition. There's somebody who's already carrying on with that dream that, I can call to say, oh, please, I need your guidance, I need your tutelage, I need your leadership on this matter. Godfatherism is a totally different kettle of fish. And Godfatherism is usually a bit more exploitative and destructive to the entire process. Because my mentor is looking out for the best for me. My mentor wants to replicate him or herself in me. My mentor wants to leave me behind as a legacy, as I'm 70. Toyosi is my product and is a result of my deliberate effort to be able to raise a responsible member of the next generation. Godfatherism is a totally different thing. Godfatherism, the way it works in Nigeria, is somebody is the person who put the money down for you to run for election, and you perpetually are answerable to that person in a context that diminishes your own personal values in the long run. So, for example, you need to steal to oil the wheel of that relationship. You need to do things that are compromising, even that completely do not align with your own personal values, to be able to continue to and we've seen instances. I mean, let's save ourselves all that fine detail, but we've seen instances of. So in the end, Godfatherism does not in any way put the younger person in good light.
Okay, we have a last question for you, just quickly now. How can the youth, this generation, because you raised that issue earlier on, avoid the mistake or mistakes of the older people, from whom they will take over?
Well, the first thing would be to watch the results. In management, in business school, we don't appraise effort, we appraise result. And it doesn't matter how much work you put into anything. What we want to see would be the result. And I think the point is, for me, this would be my personal mantra, in the way that I'm approaching leadership in this country. To be fair to all men, at all times, would be number one. Number two would be to appraise the quality of results that people have acquired over the years. So I look at this person, what are the basic steps he has taken, what are his results? If you believe that, hijacking ballot boxes or stealing money or taking advantage of the people that you're meant to be leading got the person to where he is, then do it. But if you also know that the person has a possibility of being landed, you may land in jail, or maybe that person who cannot walk around after being governor for 8 years, who cannot walk around on the streets, will be stoned to death, then it's good for us to look at the results. But the way that our generation would be more responsible is to frustrate tradition with creativity. We've got to be different. That is the approach. There is no way, there is no way we can. It's only a crazy person who does the same thing over and over and expects a different result. If we've seen that the approach to leadership of the older generation has not in any way, added value or improvement to Nigeria, say for a few people who have been selfless and, we know, then it would be crazy for our generation to want to replicate such principles. And I think it will be important to understand that we do not start to lead when we become 40. At 30 today, I have several young people that I'm mentoring, I'm inspiring. The first girl to ever contest for president in the University of Ibadan used to work in my office. So I'm excited to know that Nigeria is on the right track.
I must confess,
and our generation will do better.
You've added so much value to this discussion. It's been quite interesting having this discussion with you. I'm impressed, and I'd like to encourage you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Nigeria. And you have a safe trip back to Lagos.
I will. Thanks a lot.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break. We'll have another guest, a youth activist, ambassador, of course, not just to Africa, not just to Nigeria, but for the whole African continent. We'll be hosting him in a short while. Stay with us.
Running on the network service of the NTA from the stable of the NTA Educational Television. This quarter, a wide variety of educational programs. Farm Bus, Tuesdays 5:30 p.m. It is fun-filled and educative for children ages 5 to 11. Work It Out, Saturdays 9 a.m. Work It Out is a mathematics quiz program for students of junior secondary schools. Take a Step, Tuesdays 6 p.m. with a repeat broadcast on Sunday 10 a.m. Take a Step is a general purpose quiz program for students in senior secondary schools. Young Inventors, join the Young Inventors every Mondays at 5:30 p.m. Young Inventors encourages and celebrates creativity, ingenuity, and originality among children and young adults. It's a bouquet of active participation, learning, and being educated in an interesting way.
Nigeria. We the people decree that the power of evil secrecy shall fail.
All Nigerians should understand that a divided Nigeria can only mean catastrophic consequences for the entire black race.
We all African countries count on you, and you are our beacon of hope.
That when Nigeria sneezes, all of us will catch cold.
All of us who look to Nigeria for lessons and inspiration never cease to thank God for this wonderful gift to Africa.
Nigeria enjoys the respect, the admiration, the friendship, and the hope of an entire continent.
The powerhouse of Africa.
Nigeria.
Unite and build Nigeria.
God bless Nigeria.
A message from protectors of Nigerian posterity.
A new day is almost a clean slate. The plethora of opportunities offered. The chance to choose.
Investing in agriculture is the key.
Set your agenda. Begin your day. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, this is coming to you live from the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're having a major conversation. The issue is how to channel the massive energies and enterprise of our young people into competitive democratic politics and national development. We had our first guest already, Ms. Akerelu just left, and we have joining us now a youth ambassador and activist. It's Mr. Marvin Yubana, and it's also the African representative on the World Assembly of Youth. Mr. Yubana, I'd like to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. Let's, begin. We can, there are so many aspects of this that we have already explored, but there are key issues that have come on to the various discussions that we have had on this topic since yesterday. And one of it, of course, has to do with the challenges that young persons face and how those challenges can be surmounted in terms of competitive politics, rather than being used as a cannon fodder by way of thuggery and the other destructive aspects of politics. How can our young persons be more motivated, as it were, to compete in active politics and therefore have the opportunity of self-actualizing, bearing in mind the previous examples of the forefathers of our nation?
Well, I think it is expedient on every young person to survive. And once you have that zeal in you that you want to survive, you want to ensure that you grow beyond where you are, you must put in effort. You need consistent effort, and you need to stay focused on your goal you intend to achieve. That is one key thing, because when you don't have that will as an individual, it becomes very difficult for you to drive that desire you have in you to a conclusive, a realistic conclusion. It becomes very, very difficult for you at that point. So that is one of the challenges we have as young people. Because when you have, for instance, you are within some peer pressure. I don't want to be a medical doctor, but because my peers are all studying medicine, I feel that that is what I should do, because it's kind of a competition among ourselves. I want to be like them. Then I'm putting myself under pressure. But meanwhile, I know I have some challenges when it comes to studying medicine, and I put myself in that field, then I am not doing myself any service. This is some of the pressures we go through. That is just a typical example. But when you look at those who have gone through secular education and they are out of it and they've come into the labor market, for instance, young people, they want to concentrate purely on what they've learned. I know in the economic world, flexibility is the key. You don't need to be rigid and say, look, because I studied medicine, I must remain there in this field. No. The market, for instance, demand The demand in the market depends on what the people want. You might be a GSM operator, for instance, and you make money more than a medical doctor, because that is what the market wants at that particular time. So you must be able to face these challenges to say, look, how can I get into the market? You must study the environment in which you are and see how you can excel. These are things we have to look into as young people. For instance, in the World Assembly of Youth now, what we do is to moderate, provide programs for all youth, national youth organizations across the globe, those who are affiliate members to our organization. That's what we do. And why these programs are focused towards meeting up with the Millennium Development Goals and what the UN has packaged for young people. And also ensuring that some countries who are also member countries should have, should domesticate some of the regulations, international regulations they have signed, which will now enable young people to be involved in governance. For instance, now, there's a certain percentage that Nigeria, as a nation, has signed into that. Yes, we have about 65% of young people in as the population in our country. So, generally within the globe, we said, okay, 15% of those in government, those actors in government should be young people. You understand? If the United Nations says that, and Nigeria is a signatory to it, we should try to domesticate it. This is where the National Assembly, the State Assembly, the governors, and even the presidency comes in. The executive arm of government might have the willpower to push this forth, but those at the legislative arm of government will say, how does this concern us? How does it? It's not part of what we are discussing because there's no money. I can give you a scenario. In the last administration, the efforts of young people and the willpower of the young people pushed the executive arm of government to create what is called the Ministry for Youth Development. There was a dedicated ministry. It used to be Youth and Sports, Youth and Women Development, but now there was a dedicated Ministry for Youth Development. But as I speak to today, funding for that ministry is in trickles. Why? Because the National Assembly has made it very difficult. They don't see the importance in putting money in that sector. They say, how does it benefit us? Youth development, how? Why? Is it necessary? There is a youth village that was given to the youths of Nigeria. That's like an area in Abuja. As I speak till today, that area is not yet developed. Nobody, not even a stone, has been put down there because there's no funding. And you cannot blame the Minister for Youth because those are the legislators, even when the executive try to put it in the budget, they will throw it away. They don't care. They don't mind. They don't want to know what that has to do, except they are the ones who will initiate the project and they are going to fund it.
Okay, Marvin.
So these are some of the challenges we have.
Yes, you talked about domesticating internationally, some international instruments, of course, with delegate responsibilities. My question is to whom? To whom? Earlier on, Ms. Akirele raised issues, of course, one of which, is the great expectations from government, of course, with respect to Charles Dickens, the author of the great book. Now, and she questioned the capacity and preparedness of Nigerian youths, which boils down to issue of quality. So, what are we talking about? Whom are we delegating responsibilities to?
Well, in terms of delegating responsibilities,
are we prepared at the Nigerian youth?
Yes, definitely.
They have the capacity and
definitely, the Nigerian youths are well prepared. They are well informed. They are well enlightened. They are ready to participate in the act of governance. Let me tell you something that happened. During the special interest groups that were formed to build up these Millennium Development Goals, I was also a member of that group. And a lot of young people made contributions. I can tell you that 80% of the resolutions or the implementation of the MDGs came from young people. I can tell you. It was what they wanted, and they made input. If you look at all the committees that are being set up here and there, and people are being appointed, those who work for these people to actualize what they want to do are young people. They are the ones who think. They are the ones who implement. So even when you talk about electoral process, for instance, the voting force lies with the young people.
Do they know that?
Everybody knows that, and the young people know that. But the thing is that when we talked about opportunities, You know, we have money politics playing around in Africa, not just Nigeria, because of the perceived nature of our political style. You have to do big ceremonies, you have to get a large crowd of people, you know, and it becomes difficult for those persons who are not well-to-do to be able to participate, and that gives them some kind of, should I call it a challenge or an impediment for them to get involved in this, and because of that they don't get involved. But you see, if, for instance, we have the African Youth Charter, and Nigerian domesticates the African Youth Charter in total, then, like women say they want 35%, there it is very clear on what percentage you can give to the youth. Nigeria can say, well, we don't want to do that. But let's say 10% of every appointment in government goes to young people. It doesn't matter where they come from. And it will be based on merit, not politics. It's based on merit. Now, if you look at the program that the federal government came up with, the You Win program, young people were asked to come up with business ideas. And they competed. And people won. People who do not know Okonjo Iweala, do not know anybody in government, were winning across the country, outside Nigeria, young Nigerians. So you see, if you say the capacity of young people to participate in these things is limited because they are not prepared, it's not true.
No, but there are also pertinent issues of maladjustment, either, and of course, which arises from poor socialization. We discussed it yesterday, and you know, the earlier guest we had this morning also referenced it. Young persons don't want to grow. You want to leapfrog and be where I am today, not minding how old I am. You don't want to pass through the crucible. Issues of integrity, issues of imbibing corrupt habits, and the poor ethics that are unhelpful. These are some of the impediments, and the fact that young persons also make themselves willing tools in the hands, you know, of apparently misguided politicians. How do we begin to change this mindset of young persons? Yes, you have identified some positive aspects of young people, but for the greater majority, it would appear that the drawbacks of maladjustment, you know, are obviously an impediment, you know, to their forward leap.
Well, I agree with you that society influences the people, but let us also remember that the society is a reflection of the individuals you have in the society. That is how it is. It's very clear about it. If I am a carpenter, for instance, you don't expect me to, at the same time, become a mechanic. That is how we are. Now, I think that it is important that the parenting, I listened to the first guest, the parenting aspect is very crucial because there's a foundation to everything. The parenting, those who are religious people too, has to do a lot, like in mentoring people, ensuring that religion is not used as a tool for insurgency, for militancy, for anything. It's not used. And politics is not used as a tool for violence. You see, these are regulatory framework that can be put in place and enforced. When it is enforced, it tends to bend what bends the way society behaves. For instance, let us look at one of the issues the first guest raised, like issue of people being not being patriotic. People throw away sachet waters and all that. If there are stiff regulations within a city, for instance, Abuja, and you say if you drop pure water, you're going to pay 100, whatever amount of money, as the case may be, or go to jail. You will see that people tend to behave. Nigerians tend to behave when the government or the authorities try to enforce some of these regulations. But you know, we are blessed with a kind of government in Nigeria, most especially within this dispensation, that the president is somebody who has allowed people to work, gives you responsibility and allow you to go the way down how you do your thing and do it properly. And he has also created those enabling environment for different departments of government to function without having those bureaucratic things that you have to go back, reference to the president or to the executive for you to be able to function. No. This has created that opportunity for people to ventilate, people to excel. That is why you see some ministers becoming super ministers, some are not working, because it is the reflection of the individuals who they are. You understand? But for young people, they look at these older ones And some people learn from older people because some people are their role models, some are not their role models, some they want to aspire to be like these people. You cannot change that overnight. It is something that the society must deal with from the community level, from the school, from the family level. These are all issues that must be dealt with as a people. But let me not lose the fact by saying that Nigerians are not laid back. If you keep a Nigerian child to compete with any child from anywhere in the world, you find that the potentials in that Nigerian child is more. Because we seem to have some kind of extra, what I call it?
Innate capacity.
Yes, that you don't believe that a Nigerian will have it. And they do it. Take the experience from the fight against Ebola. What has happened? Do you know, up to your little children in the house, they know how to wash their hands. They are very cautious about all these things. And you see, this is how a society grows. So when there's leadership, the society follows. And that is how it is. It's all over the. So it is a chain of command that people have to change their attitudes. And besides that, but what I think will be able to work to create the enabling environment for young people, which is what we are talking about, is that there are some regulations which are bottlenecks for young people to grow should be removed. For instance, NYSC. When you have your NYSC and you graduate, you pass out from NYSC, what happens? You just go into the labor market. What is the responsibility of government to ensure that within this period, if it's 1 year, 2 years, where you're seeking for a job, that you are being monitored and you're giving community service back to the nation? So if you create, for instance, a social welfare fund for young people, now the people who are going to benefit from it will be those who pass through the NYSC, who have served the country for 1 year. Once they serve this country for 1 year, 2 years down the line, they are being monitored. They are doing community service. They are doing other things. So you're following them. So the time for them to go and get involved in some nefarious activities is not there. And within this period of 1 year of serving the nation, they must learn skills that they can use in surviving. That 1 year period that they are serving the nation, it might be anything. Some manual things, some skills, whatever, that could help them absorb themselves into the labor market. And other things too. Government needs to have a dedicated policy on SMEs, small businesses. How can the banks, the central bank, the commercial banks, how can they support small businesses to grow? That is very key.
Yeah, incidentally, that is already being done by the federal government. I'm sure you're aware of the huge tranche that has been voted. But that's the much we'll be able to take from you this morning. Mr. Marvin Yobana is the African representative on the World Assembly of Youth. You've raised very pertinent issues on this very significant topic. Well, thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
Okay. This is Good Morning Nigeria, which is coming to you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a break now. When we return, we'll take our last guest.
Whether your need revolves around business or pleasure while in Abuja, the superb new Savannah Suites with innovative and modern luxury facilities in Area 3 is now providing a unique experience of hospitality in the FCT. It's a haven of peace and tranquility in our superior bedrooms and suites. The Chum Chum concept is still the best in town, dishing out mouth-watering recipes freshly prepared. Our bar is also stocked with your delightful usuals. Exotic venue for your conferences and other engagements. The Gwarinpa Savannah Suites is comfortable, calm, and distinct. Visit us today or call 0803-502-1519 or 005-362-9568 for reservations. Savannah Suites, a celebration of luxury and style.
Of all our women, because our pastoral land should be our pastoral. Those who are going to be farmers,
Manda TV yalla boy.
Can't you see us in the meeting?
Wallahi, I see plenty people. Wallahi, they show you one times. I don't go share them again. Wallahi, wallahi.
Musa, je ka TV.
Allah boy on the TV.
wonderful.
We have a total of 4,900,000 people.
And look at, wallahi, we must do our most. Everybody must attend our town rally in North Central, Northwest, and Northeastern zone.
Yawa! I will feel cry go around the town. Wallahi, yalla bai at once. Yeah, kowa jama'a mai gari yana gayyatar kowa da kowa a fada. Mai gari ya gaishe ku. If you are informed, ko da yaro jariri na goye a baya. Mai gari ma tinyu a majalisa an jima saboda ana gayyatar kowa.
Oh yeah, Turn Northern Nigerian rallies ya fara sosai fa. North Central people, North West people, North people. The town rally they will domoto now. Saturday, September 13th, Saturday, September 28th, and Saturday, September 27th. Kawaii. President Goodluck Jonathan don't do us better. Wallahi, make we join other multitudes of Nigerians to thank him well and join for the demand. Turn Northern Nigerian rallies. Now we go begin rally the main rally. Well past other rallies.
Continue your good work, Nigerians support you.
This message is brought to you courtesy Transformation Ambassadors of Nigeria. TAN for One Vision, Nigeria.
All right, thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. We are taking our last guest now on our principal topic of conversation this morning, and it's Mr. Victor Bobai, former special advisor to the Kaduna State Governor on youth matters. Incidentally, he has a record of being an advisor to 3 governors of Kaduna State. Mr. Bobai, I would like to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Nigerians.
Just to add, Kingsley,
yes.
He just drove in from Kaduna this morning. He's just arriving from Kaduna.
Absolutely. That's. I would like to thank you for taking our time to be with us on this program. Let's start with your experience as special advisor to 3 different administrations in Kaduna State. What did you find particularly significant about the youth that you advised the governors to? What did you find in terms of their energies, in terms of their expectations, and solutions to the problems or challenges that they face?
Basically, the youth stands from the very fulcrum of any developing capacity. You gather them, you mobilize them, you direct them, and you use them to achieve a particular objective. Every time you get to that point, you need them. As soon as you have them delivering completely what you desire, you abandon them. It has always been a very serious challenge, when you try to get in touch with the same system you've served, with the same people, that invite you to mobilize these people. You go sometimes to lie against your personal values to ensure that this youth follow you. The moment you get there, you abandon them. And they don't look at you. They look at those people that come to them and tell them, give us your energy. Come, let's support this person. This is the right person. This is the right direction. Let's support the person. And they give you everything. Like the Hausa man said, idan sun tura mota ya tashi sai a baro su. That is, you ask them to help you push the car. Once the car starts, you zoom up. You don't even turn, you don't look at them, you don't say anything. The policies you bring are not policies, that will sustain them, that will develop them, that will re-engineer them, that will give them a purposeful direction. This has always been the case. From these 3 administrations I have served, I will not score anybody, but I will say the system has looked the same, the pattern has never changed, the color is the same. The only thing is in terms of human relation. Like today, if you call McCarthy and you don't get him, you send him a text, he will reply you immediately. He has that attitude. Nama Disambo, the President Vice President, if you meet him one-on-one and you are able to pass through all the hurdles and see him, your problem is solved. Yakoa had a program, but he never lasted. We did see something in Yakoa that the youth of Kaduna and probably the youth of Nigeria will have said, okay, this is leadership that looks like our own. Today we have a new governor, a very vibrant young man in Kaduna State. in person of Mokhtar Ramallah Yero. He's quite young. He's my mate. It's just that he's very big financially and has every financial capacity. That is the barrier. But I see him as somebody who wants to do something better. But the barriers they have built around him, they've barricaded the youth. They see them as very ambitious. They see them as people who are not ready to follow certain unnecessary principles to get to their destination. So these are the problems, you know, I believe when you relate with other people in other parts of Nigeria, you hear them say the same thing. You bring us closer when you need us. As soon as you get what you have, you put a barricade. Consciousness is arising.
Okay, let's quickly look at what you think, what your views are on this existing mindset within the political arena, that the role of the youth begins and probably ends, you know, with thuggery in political process.
Honestly, I would say, you know, they say he who pays the piper detects the tune. A very hungry youth who probably had finished his university. Let me give you an example of one of my uncles. When I finished Ahmadu Bello University, I read international studies in 2000. I got to him and I said, Uncle, I finished studies, I want to work. He said, go and get a master's degree. And he has forgotten all the process I went through, the pains I went through to graduate, to get a first degree. I remember, you know, when he finished his secondary school, there were jobs waiting for him, and he was able to mobilize small resources. He got married, he built a house, and he was able to train himself to the university. And I said, look, Uncle, I have just finished my university. All I need is a small opening. Once I get that opening, I will assume the leadership of my own household. And he said, young man, go get a master's degree. In Nigeria today, if you don't have a master's degree, you're finished. They keep saying things like that. I see him like any other man who has the ability to assist. They bring you closer to see what they enjoy, but they deny you the advantage and the privileges to be part of making things happen for your people.
But you must position yourself, because like most of our guests here say, it's not about the great expectation from government. It's not about the great expectation from a godfather or a godfather.
From your uncles.
Yes, from your uncles. No. It's about you. What are your capabilities? How have you presented, you know, yourself? Do you have a vision that people can buy?
Listen, may I ask you a very simple question? Do Nigerian youth look very lazy? Do we look lazy? Don't we have the capacity similar to any other youth setup in other parts of the world? We have everything it takes to give everything that is desired. But you know, let me say something. With the technological advancement, reducing every difficulty to just the button, we are communicating. The young men are communicating. The consciousness has gotten to a level where you cannot stop us. If you undermine us, the youth are more than 72% in anything that determines everything in Nigeria. And our consciousness transcends beyond boundaries, whether religious, ethnic. I want to give an example during the fuel crisis, the subsidy thing. In less than 5 hours, we are all conscious. Everybody, once you open your phone.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bobai. Let's. I know you're responding to my colleague Claire. Let's channel this again, because it's a matter that has arisen in the course of our conversations since yesterday. Why, for instance, will the youth allow themselves to quote you, used and dumped? And secondly, our last guest before you came in has cited examples of government programs. You win, for instance, opportunities. Is it difficult for Nigerian youth themselves to also have initiative?
Oga, if you write everything that is required, if you have a program, I developed an agenda in Kaduna. I called it the Youth Entrepreneur Clinic. It was a beautiful program where we moved from all parts of the local government to bring youth that are willing to exercise their ability in what they've learned, so that we get small loan and assistance either from government or private owners, either from banks, so that these guys can can expand what they have. The processes are very, very cumbersome. They are very difficult. First, they harass you you have to bring collateral, you have to bring all sorts of things that is very unnecessary and very uncivilized. When a system is determined to assist a community to develop her human and mental capacity, she makes every hurdle softer. Now, we are willing, we are able. Like I asked, are we not able? Are we not capable? We are all capable. But I think the problem lies with the leadership. I will give President Jonathan small kudos because we are going to determine whether he has done so well if we look around and see whether Master A, B, C, D is better from where he used to be in 2011. If he's not better, and we feel we can relate, from every part of the political sphere and engineer a change that is positive. The change can be from within, it can be from without. But if we see that Jonathan has done very well, like I said, we can score him a little bit above the other part of our situation. The UN program is good, but it's a bit elitist. You have to know somebody to get to it. I've written it severally online. I have never gotten any invitation. I have had people say, look, you people are very close to them. Get to them so that we see it.
There is a new policy also on micro and small businesses?
These policies have been there even during...
Funding.
Even during Gawan. You can imagine when a government will tell you they have plenty money, they don't know how to spend it. Imagine if from that time they have corrected it. We wouldn't be where we are today. But I just believe that begin to trust us and give us the ability to lead. Like in the Ministry of Youth and Sport, how can you bring a former governor who is more than 50 years and you say you brought him so that he can advise us? We want to advise ourselves, we want to talk to ourselves, we want to fight with each other so that we can arrive at a solution that will save this country. We don't want people to give us their story. We want to make our own story. When you bring a man that is more than 50 years, from Bamanga Tukuri is how many years old? I was in primary school, I used to hear him. I go to secondary school, I heard of him. I get to university, I saw him.
Okay.
So we need to give us an opportunity.
Let me ask you a last question, Mr. Bubai. It's over 15 years since the return of democratic rule in Nigeria, and quite a number of Nigerian youths contested and have won elections into elective posts across all board. Would you say, how would you rate some of their contributions? You know some of them, you've been an advisor, of course, in that portfolio.
You want to ambush me because I know that somebody like my friend, Dino Malai, he has done very well. But along the line, certain class of individuals saw him as somebody who is an advocate for the youth. And they tried to bring something to color his face. Today I asked him, Dino, are you still a youth or you've joined their class? So each time we have a shining star, they rebrand him. You understand? So I will say that the democratic processes, it's not homegrown. It's a Western style of democracy that is not perfect for our system. We need to redevelop a particular democratic process.
You answer my question.
No.
I want you to look at those that are presently, occupying positions. We're talking about the contributions that they have made. How do you assess them? Let's not even talk about, we're not talking about the type of process. Democracy is democracy.
What gives birth to what you want to value? It's a system. What is the system all about? It's a collection of individuals that has ability which could be trusted by a community.
Do you have
or people.
youth representatives from your geographical zone occupying elected positions?
No, completely. For now, we don't. They don't even have the money to contest election. Like in PDP now, they are telling us that to be a member House of Assembly, you need to get like 5 million naira to buy form. And if I have 5 million, I'll open a fish pond. I will do a lot of things. And it is better for me than to sink my money into a system that tomorrow I will not even be recognized by the same people that sent me there.
Sorry, Mr. Bobai, just one last question. You said that the youth should be given the opportunity to argue amongst themselves, to quarrel and to fight. When two persons are fighting, for instance, in the roped arena, you need a referee, as happened last weekend when Maidana took on Floyd Mayweather. But now bringing the issue of mentorship. your role models and the issue, of course, of Godfather. Do young persons feel comfortable with the kind of mentorship that is available now in the political arena? And if no, what would you like to see?
Sir, seriously, I don't see any mentorship in our system. What I see is convenient friendship. Somebody who is higher does not even believe whether you're a young man that should be mentored. He sees you as a tool that he can use to actualize his dream. That's what I see. But you know, that consciousness, I tell you, the Nigerian youth have it now. And that consciousness is going to give birth to a society that the elders will watch us and see what we can do. I want to believe that because we are the only part of the, we are the only set of people that have been neglected. The women had a very perfect share. We had them, you know, in the 30% or 35% affirmation. We challenged the system to make sure that these women have been given their adequate representation. Now it is left for the women to realize that their sons and daughters that are younger, who they have kept, also have an opportunity to be part and parcel of a system that could re-engineer, rebrand a new Nigeria.
All right, Mr. Victor Matthew Bubai, former special advisor to Kaduna, 3 Kaduna state governors on youth matters. We'd like to thank you and once again really appreciate you for coming all the way from Kaduna State this morning to join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
This is Good Morning Nigeria, and talking sports now. FIFA President Sepp Blatter has got a major contender in his run for the 5th term in office, and group stage matches of UEFA Champions League have started across Europe, as Musradan Wahab tells us in his package.
All right, welcome. Let's talk sport now. UEFA Champions League group stage matches began yesterday across Europe with tight competitions among the various clubs. Let's quickly see the results from the matches played last night. And today, Stamford Bridge will host German side Schalke 04 to face Chelsea. Manchester City will be away in Germany for the showdown against Bayern Munich. Roma vs CSK Moscow. Super Eagles striker Ahmed Musa is expected to take part in that match. IS will host PSG. Barcelona against Apoel Nicosia. Nogometni Club Maribor will be home to face Sporting Club. And Athletic Bilbao will host FC Shakhtar Donetsk, while FC Porto will play FC Bates Borisov. And former FIFA official Jerome Champagne has formally announced that he will stand against incumbent Sepp Blatter in next year's election for president of the World Soccer Body. The Frenchman, FIFA's former director of international relations, announced in January that he intended to run for the presidency, the most powerful job in soccer, but then confused many observers with his comments regarding Blatter. At his launch news conference, Champagne had declared he did not believe he could beat Blatter and that he was undecided about whether he would even run if his former boss was a candidate. Blatter, 78, announced last week that he would seek a 5th term. And with UEFA President Michel Platini having decided against challenging him, the prospect of the Swiss being unopposed looked likely. Champagne did not mention Blatter by name in his statement, but the 56-year-old said it was important to have a debate over the future of the game. And a very quick one from golf. Tiger Woods says he has not swung a golf club yet in his most recent break from competitive golf, but his strength has returned and he's planning to play in a charity tournament in early December.
I haven't swung a golf club yet. I've just been shadow swing without a club, but I've been busting my butt in the gym pretty hard, and I got my strength back, which is nice. Now the next goal is to get my explosiveness and my fast twitch going, and that's the next phase of my training.
Woods was at Isleworth Country Club on Monday to present the sponsor of his World Challenge. He has not competed in 5 weeks since missing the courts at the PGA Championship, but said he will play in the World Challenge. About sports this morning, the program continues shortly.
All right. In an effort to secure better financing and air support for peacekeepers, the UN peacekeepers have taken over the mission in the Central African Republic. Here is Patricia Esamiluba with these and other stories on the foreign scene.
Hello and welcome. News from around the globe making the headlines say the United Nations has taken over peacekeeping mission in Central African Republic, previously run by African Union, a move that rights groups said must lead to more action to protect civilians from attacks. In the capital, Bangui, members of 6,000-strong African Union peacekeeping force that has struggled alongside some 2,000 French troops to restore order swapped their green berets for the blue ones worn by UN peacekeepers across the world. The existing African troops are being joined by soldiers from elsewhere, including Morocco, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, to make up the force in CAR. The former French colony has been paralyzed by violence for nearly 2 years, deeply divided as its north is mostly occupied by mainly Muslim Salika rebels who seized power last year but were forced to step down in January. Before the transition, in addition to the AU force known as MISCA, a French peacekeeping operation had been deployed in the country as violence threatened to spiral into genocide. The force, to be known as MINUSCA, will have up to 10,000 troops, 1,800 police, and 20 correction officers. It assumed authority on September 15th. And over to the Middle East, Syrian government forces have launched a military operation in the eastern outskirts of Damascus to dislodge rebel forces from one of their last remaining strongholds. The offensive in Joba district, located on the eastern fringe of Damascus, marks the beginning of a government campaign to secure the capital against rebel attacks and to regain key infrastructure and transport routes to the city's eastern part. For the first time, the government side is using sophisticated missiles against the militants led by Islamic State extremists and the Al-Qaeda-affiliated Al-Nusra Front. Explosions and thick smoke caused by the shelling could be seen near buildings that were believed to be rebel hideouts. Supported by tanks and heavy artillery, the military says its soldiers are making slow but steady progress against the rebels. The military did not reveal what type of weapons were used in the attacks, but reports suggest their newly obtained weapons are especially effective against tunnels and bunkers. Still in the Middle East, a suicide car bomber killed at least 3 foreign troops in an attack on a convoy near the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. The NATO-led coalition said it is one of the worst attacks on international forces in the Afghan capital in months. The attack near the heavily fortified embassy comes amid a months-long political stalemate and an embattled insurgency, with a presidential election still unresolved as most foreign combat troops prepare to leave by the end of the year. The Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack on the main road leading to Kabul's international airport, not far from the sprawling U.S. Embassy compound that is also home to other members of the NATO-led International Security Assistance Force, ISAF coalition. ISAF said in a short statement that 3 of its troops had been killed and that it was investigating the incident. The coalition recalled an earlier statement that said 4 troops had been killed and at least 5 were wounded. There was no immediate word on any Afghan casualties. Tensions have been building in Afghanistan since the disrupted runoff vote in the presidential election in June, with rival candidates still arguing over the outcome despite U.S. efforts to broker a compromise deal. Taliban insurgents have been exploiting the uncertainty, launching bombings and attacks on government security forces and officials across Afghanistan. Finally, an earthquake with magnitude of 6.5 shook buildings in eastern Japan, including the capital Tokyo, but there are no reports of serious damage. Japan's meteorological agency said the earthquake was centered in Ibaraki Prefecture, just northeast of Tokyo. Reports said the depth of the earthquake was 50 kilometers and there was no risk of a tsunami. All trains in Tokyo and surrounding region were immediately stopped and delayed for systematic damage checks. However, operations resumed a few hours later. That is it from the foreign scene. Kingsley and Claire will continue with the rest of the program. Do have a fulfilled day.
Okay, thank you there, Patricia, for the update on the foreign scene. And on arts and entertainment, Ngozi Chude tells us about a blockbuster that is about now to hit the screens.
Hello, and good to have you join us again. It's the celebration of arts and entertainment as usual, and today we'll take a look at Nollywood. One peril in the movie industry in the past is having to contend with bad visuals, untidy story plots, and inconsistencies. Today, the few films at the cinemas have proven that the Nigerian movie industry is gaining some ground in professionalism. One Nollywood actor, director, and producer concerned with excellence and living above mediocrity is set to release another blockbuster in just a couple of days. Let's hear more.
More Nollywood flicks continue to make the box office, giving Nigerians the best of entertainment. This season alone, a couple of high-budget films are competing at the cinema, grossing millions of naira.
I don't know my husband.
Omonio Bully's Being Mrs. Elliot is getting good reviews. Half of the Yellow Sun is at the top of things, while many anticipate the release of October 1. New and set for release is Caught in the Act by Elvis Chooks.
Is it because this is not happening to me? We don't negotiate with terrorists, man. Exercise.
Caught in the Act stars Ghanaian Nigerian actress Yvonne Okoro, Nollywood actors Michael Godson, Bishop Ime, and Beverly Osu of Big Brother Africa fame. Produced and directed by Elvis Chooks, Caught in the Act tells the tale of love, betrayal, trust, and corruption, centered around a newly wedded couple and a corrupt policeman. The knot of this paper climaxed into controversies.
You're in chains, and you're in chains too. Our uniforms on. Hey, you wear uniform too.
Elvis Chooks is one Nollywood actor who has proved his mettle in the movie industry. His works such as True Citizens, Victims of Justice, and A Wish, among others, has proven is indeed seasoned. This movie, as expected, is much anticipated and ready to follow the trend of success stories recorded in the past.
Thumbs up for those guys in the industry. And on that note, we say our goodbyes, hoping to catch you again tomorrow bright and early. Do take care of yourselves.
Okay, let's go to the weather room now to find out what the prospects are for the rest of the day. Okay.
All right, that will be all we have today on Good Morning Nigeria. We thank you for watching. See you again tomorrow. I am Claire Adelabu Abdurazak.
And I'm Kingsley Osalolo. I do have a pleasant day. We'll see you tomorrow.